Each one of us that is witnessing the supremacy of our human species over the rest of the beings and their destiny. Our numbers have reached an unprecedented number in the history of mankind, more than 2 million years in the best estimate. At sometimes it seems this earth belongs to us and only for us. Millions of us have occupied every continent of this blue planet and have adapted its environment to their needs. The latest scientific estimates indicate that half of the land has been changed because of human activity, half of fresh surface water has been exploited, and 1/4 of the birds on the planet have been extinct because of us. But that was not always the case. In fact, whoever observed our species will confirm that 99% of the organisms found from the beginning of life would disappear in a matter of thousands of years. And it's true, thousands of years have not passed, and the glacial period of the present ice age, which we are still in, started 2.5 million years ago and continues, but it goes through stages whenever it's active. These stages of glacial phases are receding and things settles down after a while. Interglacial period is what we are going through these days. This period, which transformed the fertile environment in which our ancestors lived and fed on their goods to plains and desolated lands with food scarcity. This ice age lasted for tens of thousands of years. These terrible conditions killed nearly 95% of our species and we were threatened with extinction. Only a few scattered families survived in areas where food and shelter were available on the coastline of southern Africa, where environmental conditions were more favorable and less virulent. Our ancestors have miraculously surpassed the disaster, clearly expressing our flexibility, our intelligence, and our enormous ability to adapt to any environmental conditions. This victory may have been the greatest victory in the history of all mankind. Why not? Without them we would never have this foundation that is now the master/superior of these lands. After this setback and after the end of the Ice Age in the year 120,000 BC, our ancestors began to recovering their strength and numbers, and returned to colonize the continent of Africa more widely than before. Nearly 50,000 years of environmental stability have passed, but subsequent generations have had another date with cyclical climate fluctuations. Between 50,000 and 80,000 years ago, the next glacial period was at its peak. In this period, too, one of the greatest volcanic eruptions in history was in Lake Toba in the place we call today Indonesia. This volcanic eruption was so devastating that it caused a continuous winter for around 10 years, and also led to a drop in Earth temperatures for thousands of years. These terrible conditions almost took the lives of our forefathers after their recovery for thousands of years, and their numbers fell again in a frightening way. The numbers can barely fill in an opera theater. The results of genetic studies indicates that our numbers have reached 2,000 individuals who are once again my grandparents and every grandparent of all human beings since then till this day. After that phase, the first signs of civilization and art began to emerge, and the survivors began to leave the continent of Africa, which embraced us from the beginning and left the land so vast that some of them landed in Australia in a few thousand years later. The spirit of exploration began to flare up in the human world. The first part of the Middle East was the Sahara, which stood between the East and South Africa, where we were located, and between the North and the rest of the continents. The period of humidity allowed them to progress and explore North Africa and the Middle East. To Europe, where our relative Neanderthal man lived. Our ancestors were separated from the Neanderthal for around 500,000 years ago according to genetic studies. We then moved to Asia. Later a temporary ice bridge was formed between Asia and North America 15,000 years ago. Human tribes for the first time in history settled and explored the new continent. That disaster that almost got us demolished did the exact opposite, and as the philosopher Nietzsche said, that which does not kill us makes us stronger. Imagine, if it had not been for that disaster, you would have been living in East Africa in a small group with your father and your relatives who are barely over 45 years old. You would live in a constant fear of predatory organisms and of the cruelty of nature, and spend your day eating, drinking and breeding with no development in art, science, philosophy, architecture, creativity, and renewal. Perhaps that disaster was a blessing to all of us.